welcome back to A Life of Education's podcast. Caroline and I again today. This time we've got Joe Vaughan back again to talk to us from Thank You Plant Medicine. And we have his two colleagues, Jonathan Glazer and David Grillet. David's in Costa Rica. Jonathan, where are you hanging out?
Costa Rica as well.
You're also in Costa Rica. You're in London, Joe. Caroline's in Dubai. And I'm still in rainy Dublin. So we wanted to just expand on the chat we had last time about the Thank You Plant Medicine, the benefits of mushrooms. And so what I'll do is I'll throw it over to Joe, and Joe can introduce the guys, and then we can just talk a bit more about Thank You Plant Medicine and how it got off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to give a huge shout out to John and Dave for the amazing work that they've done in getting the whole Thank You Plant Medicine movement up and running. Not much for me to say about the origins of it. I'll hand that over to the guys, and they can take you through how it came about, how it's developed, and what kind of projects we're kind of looking at, kind of expanding and working on going forward.
Cool. So David, do you want to say hello and just tell us kind of a bit about the foundation? We spoke very, very briefly just beforehand.
Sure. Hello. Hi, Keith. Hi, Caroline. I'm Dave. I'm Canadian, but I live in Costa Rica. And, well, about a year and a half ago, I was invited to try ayahuasca by my good friend John in a time in my life of great transformation. I had just closed down this big project I was working on. I was feeling quite sad. And so I thought, well, this is might be a good time to try it. And never before had any interest in it. And the experience I had was, you could have a whole podcast episode in itself about the kind of things I saw and learned. Mainly, I saw how much light and love that I have inside myself, how much potential to give. And basically, I started trusting myself much more after that day. And then over the next few months, proceeded to take every opportunity possible to drink more ayahuasca and continue learning about myself and shedding the burden of traumas and issues and stories, and kind of like release them and become lighter and happier. And John and I decided to go to the World Ayahuasca Conference in June, June 2019 in Girona, Spain. And it was an extraordinary week that we spent there. And we went there wondering how we might be able to contribute to the community and learn and just meet all these interesting people. And on the last day of the conference, in a talk with a few leaders like Rick Doblin, the founder of MAPS, which he's been leading the bringing of psychedelics into the mainstream through MDMA trials in the United States. In this chat, this idea came up for a sort of a Me Too movement for psychedelics, of everyone who had benefited expressing themselves in unison on social media to change the culture around plant medicines and psychedelics. And I kind of fearlessly voiced my suggestion to the group in that room, and everyone was like, wow, this is a really good idea. Yeah, this could really help the cause. And about an hour later, it was the closing talk of the conference. It was a talk about ayahuasca and the future of society. And there we were in an auditorium with like over 1,000 people, different scientists and shamans and artists and researchers and leaders. And at the end of the talk, they said, we have 10 minutes before the closing ceremony. Does anyone have a question for us? And I kind of gave John a little elbow in the ribs, and I said, now might be a good time to suggest this, like a coming out day idea, now that we have this big crowd here. And he said, yeah, go for it. And I said, I don't know, this is probably not the right time. Let's develop the idea further. I don't know, I'm not sure. And he's like, dude, go. It's like, okay. And I swear to you that, like, in other situations, I would probably just opt to let my logical mind, convince me to not do it, and it's not the right time, and all these reasons were coming to me, these about why it wasn't the right time. But remember, in my first ceremony, what I got was a new confidence in myself and a kind of a calling to like follow my heart. And, you know, there's some magic inside of me to share and, you know, go for it. So it just kind of flipped me out of the energy well. I studied physics in university, so I think in energy wells. So it burst me out of the energy well, and I went for it. And I went in front of the audience and grabbed the mic and kind of trembling. And I was like, you know, personally, I don't share on my Facebook about how much ayahuasca or psychedelics have helped me and helped me heal, because I'm afraid of what people will think of me. But if everyone were to share their stories at the same time, I would feel willing to do it. And what do you say? Is, you know, do you guys think this is a good idea? Is there anyone who would be willing to join me 8 months from now on February 20th in sharing our stories publicly? And if you think this is a good idea, I'll be standing over here and you can give me your contact information. And so I got an applause, and to my surprise, people started kind of like flowing down the audience, and even getting some business cards thrown at me from the upper balconies, and people saying like, this is a great idea. Like, I've been working with the medicines for 13 years and I haven't even told my family. And wow, I was thinking of doing the same thing. What a great idea. Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. So we left the conference, John and I, with like a tangible mission of something that we could do to contribute. And it was basically a communication challenge of just bringing everyone from the mushroom communities and the San Pedro and the ayahuasca and the cannabis community, and getting everyone to express their gratitude on the same day. And that's how it all started. We published a video asking for 35 volunteers, and within a week we had over 100 volunteers. So the idea was just validated that this is something people were ready to do.
That's awesome. That's almost like it's the plant acting through you to give itself its own reveal, giving you the power, the confidence to step up, and then just have the release and let everybody know it's there, and it's much more common. So what about you, John? How did you get suckered into this movement?
Well, thank you for having me here, Caroline, Keith, and my friends Joe and Dave. So they tell the story pretty accurately. I think for me personally, entheogenic plants and psychedelics have been a great help. My spiritual practice was Tibetan style meditation for many years. And the Amazonian tradition came into my world and into my practice, and kind of took it a step further in terms of what I can do, where I can go, and how can I work with my own inner spaces. And going to the World Ayahuasca Conference, it was for me a way to look for where can I go and study actually. So I was looking for an academic program within the conference that I can further my study. I graduated from psychology. So I signed up for the World Ayahuasca Conference, and I signed up for Perspectives on Psychedelics Horizons in New York. And that's how I got there. But how I came out of there was completely changed my life, because with Dave's idea and us strategizing on it, we really had a tangible thing we could do that would make a dent on what's happening right now in the world. And what's happening, or what has been happening, is that the direct experience of psychedelics and entheogens is bubbling up. People are having their experiences. They see that it's not dangerous, it's not addictive, and it's actually very beneficial. So, but there's organizations around the world who are working separately, and sometimes in unison, but mostly separately on the missions. And what was missing is, in a way, or the way we saw it, is an organization that connects everybody. And somehow this message of gratitude and healing connected us individually, but it also connected many organizations together to support one cause together on one day. And that's where I think we had something special to offer, which was, let's do this globally and let's support locally from the global perspective. So when we band together as people that work with plant medicine and entheogens throughout the world, we have the capacity to support local initiatives. So, you know, the Cream Washington and the Cream Oregon, and a village in Peru that has curanderos that now don't have funds to support their families because of COVID. So there is justification and importance for a global community to work together to further our cause, and then bring our experiences, our direct experiences, above ground through telling our stories to family and friends and people in our closer circle. And by that, we destigmatize, and we also make it more acceptable to work and practice with these modalities. That's where I come from, right? I came from, I was looking for an academic course. I came out with global organizations, and here we are, you know, hanging out with good friends and planning to do great things together. Yeah.
And how did it go when you told your stories? Like, how was it received? Did it go the way you want? Was it better or was it worse? You know, how did you feel about telling the people closest to you?
So I've been telling personally my family for quite a while. Since my first experiences, I was never shy of saying, "Hey, this is great," you know, and it has great effect on me. But I had a circle of friends that didn't know about it. So when I posted on February 20th, I think actually it was February 24th, because it took me some time. We were busy with the production of the coming out day. A lot of friends said, "Wow, this is amazing," and "Wow, I respect that," you know, and I got a lot of very positive comments. As well, people coming to me and say, "Hey, Jon, do you want to go into business with me? Because I think this is the next big thing," you know? So these things happen as well, right? But you find out that people that love you, most of the time, when you express something that made you happier and better in life, and you can actually show it, it actually shows in what you do, they are supportive of it, even if they don't understand it. Most of the times, I want to say.
So, Jon, when we were off air, we were basically discussing that we wanted to dive into some of your experiences and how plant medicine changed the three of you. So if you guys don't mind, would you mind sharing those stories with us?
Yeah, I don't mind going here. Just to to go back to the previous question around how did people respond to that kind of just being open about the use of plant medicine. I mean, I have spoken to a lot of people in the UK and sort of from my previous experiences, and generally I'm met with quite a lot of sort of ignorance and stigma. I don't mean ignorance in a pejorative sense, but literally people don't actually know and understand what these plant medicines are, what they're capable of, and how they should be used in a safe and responsible way. Generally, it's kind of, the perception is it has a sort of pejorative sort of, connotation around, people in fields dancing around. And I've got nothing against dancing around in a field. And the movement that the guys have created is fully inclusive. It's not about judging anyone, but I'm just sort of saying this is what the mainstream perception of plant medicine usage is. It's hippies, it's fields, it's wacky, and it's out there, and it's not for, your average person. Meanwhile, quite happy to go to Glastonbury and partake of kind of other types of things. So there's a sort of contradiction from my side in terms of the knowledge and the understanding and what people are kind of showing in other areas. But my personal experience, I mean, I could there's been a few, but I can pick one in particular, which was my first ayahuasca experience. And for people who don't know what ayahuasca is, it's a combination of two plants which grow in the Amazon, which when combined are used for healing, and not just psychiatric healing, but also physical healing as well. It's part of the kind of the plant medicine cabinet of the Amazon, right? So you combine the vine and the leaf together, and you have a brew called ayahuasca. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about ayahuasca. Been used for a very, very long time. I mean, there's an anthropological debate about when it was starting to be used, but it's been used for a very, very long time. in the Amazon region. So first experience of ayahuasca was literally sitting in a maloca, which is a kind of a structure in an Amazonian setting in the middle of the Amazon, sitting in the dark, drinking some very bitter and in some ways unpleasant brew, and sitting there feeling very, very kind of, excited, strange, but what's going to happen, because you hear all these stories, and there's 20 people in the room, and it's quite intense, and there's things happening, but literally nothing happened at all. I was sitting there and I was waiting, and I was expecting the cosmic stars and the rest of it and all the stuff you hear about. Nothing. Sat there in the dark, not kind of thinking, it hasn't worked. I just was like, well, this is what it is. I'll just wait and see. And then we were very lucky in the place that we went. It's called the Temple of the Way of Light in Peru. I mean, a really fantastic place. And in that particular ceremony, there were five shaman. I think it was 5, and they all came round and they sang what's called an icaro, which is a song of the plants. So you have to sort of suspend your skepticism a bit and just go with the kind of the belief system of the people, the Shipibo people, which is each plant has its own energy, and each plant, and there's a song of a plant. Each plant has a song, but there are many songs of the plants. So a shaman would come and sit in front of you in the dark, and sing a song of the plants to you, which sounds, maybe not for everyone, but what happened in that moment of literally nothing happening was that in that moment and in that connection with that shaman, I was able to be taken back to a place at that kind of, the fundamental kind of starting point of my life. It was very, very strange. It was very, very mysterious. And that the song that was being sung to me was being sung to the baby of my baby. I was a tiny child, and I was taken back there, not in a literal tripping way, but in a way which I felt in the actual experience itself, that I was being sung to and nurtured and cared for by a universal energy and intelligence, which was literally blowing my mind at that point, because as I say, it was very calm, nothing was happening, wasn't tripping, wasn't being sick, nothing was happening, but I was being literally built, not so much taken apart of me, but that part of me that needed to be nurtured, which perhaps wasn't nurtured in the way that it should have been, was being nurtured by a kind of a universal and warm and kind of, I guess, cosmic energy, but through the medium of a song being sung to me in the dark in a mysterious language that I didn't understand. And that was the kind of, the launch pad and building block for the kind of the next phase of my life. And I'll report the benefits, which have been, increased happiness with my own family, being a better father, being a better husband, feeling like I'm, just more in tune with the world, and just generally experiencing benefits which are, almost incalculable, because, they don't exist on a spreadsheet. Happiness does not exist on a spreadsheet. Happiness is something that you feel and that you live every day. And that's what you share with your family and your kids and the people that are close to you. And through the great work that these guys have done in bringing us all together, the kind of, hopefully, the wider world. And I'm not arrogant or naive in thinking I can change the world myself, but it's about having that energy and that passion for wanting to make it available to people to be able to receive the same types of healings and benefits that I was able to do. Hopefully that wasn't too long.
John, David, do you want to add to that rather? Did you want to say anything there?
Sure. I'd be happy to share a story that's a little similar. One of many. It's seriously so much has healed in me and benefited from these experiences. But one story that comes to mind is I've always been very self-conscious of like when other people are looking at me and kind of like what other people will think of me. And I used to be like completely paralyzed at the idea of public speaking, for example. But even, I've done some public speaking, but even more recently, what I've noticed is like I go for a walk with my dog and like a car drives by and I just feel like a pang of self-consciousness of like, they're looking at me. What are they thinking? So, so I've been just kind of wondering about this and just feeling like it's limiting me of being scared of what other people think of me. And in a ceremony, as the medicine started to kick in strong and started trembling and having visions and different kind of carnival scenes and spirals and stuff, suddenly I was brought back to when I was 5 years old. I had just moved from France to Canada, and I started in grade 1. I was kind of a year younger than everyone, and I had no friends, and a lot of the kids in my class, they knew each other because they had done kindergarten together. So I walk in, and I'm just like thinking like, I want to make some friends. How am I going to make some friends? And I remembered in my little self deciding that I'm going to try to be sensitive to what other people want to see. And that's going to be my strategy for making friends, and just kind of like be attentive. What are people liking? What do they want to see? And so that became my strategy for getting along in the world and surviving socially, is like being very sensitive to what other people want to see and just trying to fit in. And that became ingrained and calcified in as my like modus operandi of socially, of like the first thing is immediately thinking like, what does this person want to see, or how are they seeing me right now? So of course getting a glimpse of that is powerful, but it doesn't, it's in how you process it afterwards and how you really make sense of it and apply it in your life that it can really make a difference. So I was mentioning this in the integration circle the next day, and the facilitator, this Mexican psychologist, it's really brilliant. She asked me about it, and she said, okay, well, what are you going to do once, now that you know this? And I said, well, I'm going to release this behavior or this pattern once and for all. And she's like, maybe what you should do is like really be thankful to this behavior because it really helped you at that time, and just say like, thank you, behavior, and thank you, little David, you did the best that you could, and this was a good strategy for you at that time to make your first friends, but you don't need it anymore. It's limiting you now to always think that way. So anytime this comes up, because it's going to continue to flare up, just like thank yourself for the behavior that once served you, but you don't need it anymore. And this has really helped me. And I've gotten significantly less self-conscious and significantly less worrying what other people think. And of course it's a change that's only I can really perceive how it's affecting me, but it's significant.
That's awesome. I would be probably the only one in this group who's not done it. Okay. So the question that I would have for each of you is, before you go into something like this, you obviously have some idea that you're open to the possibilities of what might happen, the information you might unveil, and the person you might be after it. But how far away from what you guys thought you were, or hoped, or like where your bias was, this might tell me info about this, or this might give me an understanding about that. How close or how far away was what you actually learned through say your first medicine, or your first, what would you call your first dosage? How far away was the actual expectation to the result of your first session? Anybody jump on that?
It's just so much deeper, because people can, you can read things in books, and you can read widely, and you can intellectualize, and you can discuss. But there's something, I've heard it described as in real time, or the lived experience. There's something about forgiveness as a concept, sort of, understanding it, intellectualizing it. There's another thing about actually feeling it in the core of yourself. And that's what these plants have done for me, is that they've shown me all these, beautiful concepts like, forgiveness, compassion, reciprocity, but you kind of feel it in the very fiber of your being. And that's not what I expected. I expected a kind of more of a, you're kind of tripping and it's all excitement, or it's scary or whatever, but I didn't expect it to be so simple and the message to be so deep. So it was quite far away from in a good way from what I expected. And that's where the kind of concept of the medicine comes in. Whereas even before I went the first time, I might have been thinking it's a bit of a lark or a bit of a something to do recreationally. And that's when I realized the kind of the sacredness and the kind of depth of the experience after the first time. So very different, but in a good way.
What about you, John?
Well, it's interesting because I've had experienced psychedelic states through meditation practice for a long while, but those spaces were not very visual. They were more physical, experiential. If you look at the mystical index, so they were more like converging with everything and a disillusion of the sensation of I, but not very visual. And as I moved into working with plants and also synthetics that create psychedelic states, I was mind blown with what's possible to do with our mind. So it was way above and beyond anything that I experienced before. And what happened, that the two practices converged, and the benefits that you can get are way beyond what is written out there. So for example, I couldn't sing in tune. Yeah, I always do music, piano, flutes, guitars, but I couldn't produce sound with my voice. And through one experience, it was healed. And now I almost have perfect pitch just through one experience with plant medicine. And would I have expected it? No, I had no clue that that's what's going to happen, but that's what happened. And this is just one experience, and there are many others. So I look at it as, like a treasure trove of what else can we get out of this? Or what else can happen here? That's my perspective about it. It's infinite in possibilities. So.
What about you, Caroline? What would you say? To throw it at you over there, you're very quiet.
What's your question here, Keith? Are you asking me about my experience with psychedelics, or was my experience what I thought it would be?
I mean, both. Let's do both. Let's throw both at you.
So do you know what? Actually, this is probably the first time that I've publicly admitted that I've been working with plant medicine for a while. But look, the truth is I had a really, obviously, Keith, a really severe rock climbing accident 5 years ago now. And when I first was introduced to plant medicine, I had heard a lot about it because it's a part of my heritage. So my heritage is South American. I know my dad used to do a lot of ayahuasca, and it kind of been calling on me. And when the opportunity arose, I was in a really, really dark place. Like, I had just survived this accident and I had no idea why I survived. I didn't know why I was alive. I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't understand that. And the first time I had plant medicine, the first few times I took ayahuasca, I actually fell asleep. And later I was actually told that the plant sometimes works on you in different ways. So sometimes it doesn't give you those psychedelic trips. Sometimes it heals you in a different way. And for me, the first few times it was healing parts of my body. And I had just about a very brief 5 minutes in my first ceremony where I went into kind of like this purple space, and I dove inside my body, and I was swimming through this purple space, and I was looking for my prana, for my life force. And when I was swimming around, I realized that I had none left, that everything that was energetically inside my body was exhausted in trying to keep me alive and in trying to sustain my life. And I had nothing left. And that was the first ceremony. And that psychedelic kind of visual moment was 5 minutes. And then I had my second ceremony, which was in Peru with Joe. And I fell asleep again. And I was like, oh, I felt nothing. And everyone was explaining about these experiences. And I was like, oh, great. I had a great nap. Amazing. And then ceremony 2, I remember our facilitator had come and tapped me on the shoulder and he was like, you're going first. And I remember just being like shot with fear. And I was like, shit, I'm going first. And I walked up and I sat down and I drank the medicine. And by the time I got to my little bed, I was already in the land of Aya, which I like to call it. And everybody in the circle was literally just energy. And I could see this different realm. And Mother Ayahuasca sat in front of me like this big ball of fire. And I asked her, because these are the special gifts that you have when you're there, telepathically, why I didn't die and why I'd never seen her before. And she said to me that in all of the other ceremonies, I was too sick. And so I was getting healed in a different way. And then she almost like she grabbed a match and she lit her own prana and lit me alive. And then I was just filled with like energy and I woke up. And that was, I had several other ceremonies that were extremely powerful. That was the first one. And I remember touching my body going, oh my God, like I was alive, and I needed to have a real sense of appreciation for that. And it made me realize that death is very permanent, and that life is very precious. So that was something that I learned and saw, and it was just an amazing experience. And then I had several other really amazing experiences, as Joe knows, since he's been my spirit friend through this whole journey, which is amazing. But just separate to this, Jon, I'd really like to hear about your experience as well, particularly because you're also a psychologist.
Yeah, from what direction would you like to hear about it? From what specific aspects would you like to hear about? There's so many ways to talk about it.
I guess whatever comes to you. We've all been sharing our experiences and how plant medicine has changed us, or how we've healed or grown from the experience. So I'm interested to hear, particularly because you have a very clinical perspective and then also a very personal perspective.
Okay. One of my interests are the neurobiology behind our mystical experiences, if it's through meditation or any spiritual practice, but as well through entheogens and psychedelics, and what really happened in the mind as we go through those experiences. And it interests me because it allows myself to explain myself about what I'm going through as I'm going through it. So for example, what's the correlates to, fixing my pitch, or what happened there where I solved a year and a half of issues in my business through one meditation experience combined with one ayahuasca ceremony. And the list goes on and on in terms of what happened to me inside myself. And also, I'm really interested to understand how that comes about on social level, and why now, for example. Yeah, so there's all aspects that kind of tickle me in terms of how we connect everything. And I'm going to talk about an experience that I had that is personal, but also more global. So what happened is that I've been following and Tibetan style meditation, and those aspects started to come into the West in the 60s and 70s, had a lot of research on them. And now there are, you have yoga studios everywhere, right? Entheogenic plants have been through the legal realm in the 60s and 70s, and in the 70s, and they've been, lightly researched on until the beginning of the 2000s, and now there's more research on it. And I look at my personal experience working with yoga style and Tibetan style meditation connected to how things are evolving in society, and now going into entheogenics and psychedelics. And what you see is that the Eastern tradition came into the West. Now it's mainstay in many places, and now the Amazonian traditions are coming into the West. And really, our story and the things that you're passionate about is, how can we make this world a better place? Those traditions and those spirits, in a way, came from the East and are coming from the Amazonian areas to kind of bring us new or usher to us new ways of looking at ourselves. So if we kind of put it together to my personal being, in somehow I'm combining now, long practice and tradition from the East, long practice, not long, but more fairly new practice from Amazonian traditions. And what I'm looking to do is channel that knowledge and information to benefit whomever is around me, and on a greater scale as much as I can. So I believe that our personal healings is beneficial when we use it to service others and to open ourselves to help others and lift others up. So in a sense, everything I'm doing to myself biographically is okay, but how am I showing up and what am I doing in the world? I think it's a bigger question. And when we find out that we can collaborate with each other, we are here collaborating, we're talking, we are creating a space together. We don't know each other, but we're collaborating still, and we're supporting a certain mission. Then the real gist of it comes in, because what the plants are telling us, and many people have this experience, is that collaboration instead of competition, support each other instead of fight with each other, create greater love, greater connectance, greater coherence on a global scale, not only on the personal level. And many people have this drive, and that's why we have, almost 13,000 people on the Facebook group from all over the world, from 80 countries, because many of us have this story, same story as you had, as I had, as Joe had, as Dave had, of healing. And I was okay, this is actually can solve a lot of issues we have in the world today. So what I want to show is that my personal story is important, but really our social, our communal story is gigantic. And that's why we are so passionate about it. Because we don't have dogma, we don't subscribe to specific religion. It's just about healing and about transformation and gratitude and making the world a better place. And one last thing is that many people realize when they go to those experiences is that we're actually flying on a spaceship up in space around the sun, somewhere in the galaxy. We have no clue what's going on. There are another 200 billion stars just in our Milky Way, another trillions planets in our Milky Way. And we have no idea where we came from, and we have no idea where we're going to, But realizing that little fact is extremely crucial to kind of, now I have a different perspective about what's going on around me, or just my little flat where I live, I think that's also very important. Anyways.
Yeah, that's awesome. I totally agree with that. That's just like we're on a spaceship flying towards infinity, for infinity, and who knows when the infinity will be something else. David, I know you're in a little bit of time pressure, so I just want to swing a question to you. If you could click your fingers right now and have the world see plant medicine the way you wanted to see it, how would that look? If you could just go 3, 2, 1, go. How would things look?
In my ideal world, plant medicine would be mandatory for anyone taking on any kind of leadership position, because as Jon said, these medicines create a much greater sensitivity to the real order of things, the sacredness of all living things, the importance of collaboration versus competition. And when you're in a leadership role in a company, you have a lot of power over people's lives, and about how your company is going to utilize resources, and about what service you're going to offer to the world. So I would like to see all leaders mandatorily drinking plant medicine, both political leaders and business leaders. And I think this would really change the world. And ideally, this would be combined with a practice like meditation, because the psychedelic plant medicine experience is a one-time thing, once in a while, but it's very fleeting. Whereas the meditation is the daily tool to really stay grounded and experience on a daily basis the connectedness with all things. And I think they're so complementary. And in the yoga masters of India, they say like, oh, we don't really need ayahuasca. We don't really need plant medicine. We got our tools. And the Amazon leaders, there's like yoga. We don't really need yoga. But the marriage of these two ancient schools of wisdom, I think, would be like the flowering of humanity. So that's my dream.
That's right. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Caroline does a little bit of yoga. She's done a bit of medicine. What else? You could be the spearhead for all this, Caroline.
Sorry, Joe, what were you saying?
I think that the point is about integration. I think, the process is, screening, because these are very deep and intense experiences, so they shouldn't be entered into lightly. Obviously the medicine practice itself, but then the integration part is such an important part, which maybe doesn't get the attention currently it needs. And that's possibly a function of the fact it's still very underground. And despite the fact that we know hundreds of thousands of people that are involved, it's still a relatively small amount of people we're talking about. And so it's still very underground. And so, as the momentum grows, there'll be more people who are able to kind of, show up as facilitators in terms of integration. People who've had experiences, training courses, potentially governing bodies. Although some people kind of say, hold on, we don't want it to be too structured and too formalized. So there's still lots of discussions around, how it's actually going to play out. But yeah, I mean, integration and support is such an important part of it, and indeed integrating with other practices like yoga, breath work, cold water, ice swimming, anything that kind of gets you into a kind of a more natural, kind of environment and more natural state. Interacting with plants and nature can only be a positive thing.
I was in the ocean in Dublin the other day, and it wasn't a very relaxing place. It was so cold. But no, I totally understand your point. David, is there anything else you want to add before you have to shoot off?
No, I want to say thank you so much for having us here today. And I loved the previous episode y'all did with Joe, and I'm touched by your support for Thank You Plant Medicine, and I'm gonna keep watching your show. And I want to invite the listeners to check out our Facebook group, Thank You Plant Medicine Community. It's a kind of a gathering place for all lovers of plant medicine and psychedelics, and that's on Facebook. So with that, I'll drop off, and wishing you guys a fantastic day.
Cool.
Thanks
Cheers,
for having
Dave.
me.
Nice to chat to you, mate. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. See ya.
I do.
Yeah, of course. Dave just had to shoot off there. Is there anything else you want to add, Caroline? Is there anything else we want to talk about?
No, Joe, I really wanted to kind of to agree with what you said about the integration process. And you're right, I definitely think it's because it's very much underground still, all of the plant medicine practice. But to be able to, and I guess one of the benefits of shining the light on this is to be able to bring it out of the underground and to be able to help people understand the process of it. Because there's one thing going into the jungle and you have this amazing experience, and then you fly back home and you have all of these lessons that you've learned. And it's about, well, how do I take this lesson and then integrate it and weave it into my normal life so that it does make me a more compassionate person, a better person. It changes who I am. And in the process of doing that, obviously changes the people around you. But that in itself definitely gets lost a little bit. And so it's amazing to see a group like you guys, Thank You Plant Medicine, who's trying to shine some light on that and also bring it to the surface and discussing integration practices. And I definitely think meditation is one of those for sure. I don't know, Jon, do you have anything to say about integration?
Yeah. So I want to echo that integration is very important. It's actually like a metaphor that I like to use is that, you know, when you go into a ceremony space or you go into your experience, you have like this bucket and you're, you know, standing under a waterfall of information and knowledge. And, you know, you put the bucket out, you take the bucket out, you go home, but you only stay with the bucket out of all the beautiful things you see and experience. And having systems is extremely important. Now, we need to understand that over the last 40, 50 years, there was an underground current of people that kept the practices alive and created a lot of organizations, beautiful organizations that are out there that dedicate to different types of or aspects of psychedelics and entheogenic plants, if it's safety and harm reduction and integration. And specifically on our group, there's many highly qualified psychiatrists, psychologists, people that dedicate just for the integration part or integration and preparation. So it's preparation, the experience itself, and then integration. And integration can take sometimes years. So I had after my first entheogenic experience, I had 2 years that I did not had another entheogenic psychedelic experience just because it took me so long to integrate it and to kind of put it back into and kind of make sense out of it. So I think that's I want to say about integration. It's sometimes not a day or two. Sometimes it can be a month. Sometimes it can be half a year. Sometimes it can be a few years, and that's fine. And people need to be respectful to their own process and not compare with other people's process. Because you can go on the other side and some people kind of, you know, do it too often, I'd say, and then they get lost in the waterfall. They kind of get drowned by the information that comes to them. So it's a delicate matter, and really most of the work is in the integration. It's it. So yeah, the experience itself is very important, but what's more important is what happens afterwards in my life, and is my life better off or my life is less happy, you know. So I cannot emphasize enough how integration and really putting to practice what you learn is the actually important part. It's like 1% theory, 99% practice. You have it in yoga as well. So a few words about integration.
Just this week, there was another article in a mainstream newspaper in the UK, The Guardian, and it was around the treatment of service people, people from the military who are returning from, you know, theatres of conflict with PTSD, for example, and the potential kind of, you know, healing benefits of psilocybin in this case. So what you're seeing is as it kind of unfolds and the momentum gathers, it's reaching into areas which you might previously have not have expected. You know, you would not have thought maybe, you know, 10 or so years ago that a returning service person from Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever would be looking at working with magic mushrooms of all things. People would have thought you were crazy, but this is actually part of a mainstream discussion now. So it just shows you what kind of momentum is being generated. And as Jon said, you know, the principle of the group is to kind of join as many different groups as possible, because of the strength in numbers. You know, the stronger the network, the more chance you have of creating something sustainable for the longer term.
Yeah, we were talking just before very briefly. I don't know, I might have got my wires crossed, but it's gone to the ballot now in November. I thought it was Colorado, but I think you guys mentioned it might have been Oregon as well. But that's a massive thing, isn't it? That medical psilocybin is going to be no longer outlawed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and DC a few days ago in Washington, they got enough signatures to go for the Cream Nature. A friend of ours, a few friends of us were organizing it in Washington DC, So you see, it's kind of, the science is very difficult to challenge, the science, the beneficial aspects of it. And this is why it's actually gaining grounds. And that's going to be all over the world. It's not just in the US. Actually, in many countries, it's legal and heralded as national heritage. If you look at Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Gabon, and there are different countries where Mexico for psilocybin, Netherlands for truffles and psilocybin. So it's when we think of our own countries, I think the right perspective is that, in my opinion, is that, you know, the countries where it's illegal, they're actually backward. They're actually not more advanced than the country where these practices are legal. And that's how I perceive it. And mainly because science is always coming from the back. So if you look at science 100 years behind direct experience, because it just takes so long to do the science and the double-blind trials and clinical trials, and then to repeat them and repeat them and repeat them and repeat them until you're sure that the results are correct. And to get the MDMA through the FDA in the US, it took 40 years of effort, and it's still almost there. So when science protect us, you know, for making mistakes, but it's also a very slow machine to move compared to direct experience. And I want to say that science is important, but we really need to give space to direct experience and to subjective experience of people, because it's almost unequivocal the benefits it has for many, many illnesses that people have. It's depression, suicidal thoughts, you know, end of life care, and many other aspects. And in trauma, it's not only helps in processing emotional memories that relate to trauma, it also creates neurogenesis in your brain. So ayahuasca, psilocybin, in vitro are proven to help out with neurogenesis or promote neurogenesis, which is basically the creation of new axons, but also the migration of axons within your brain to areas where you need those. So it's not only emotional healing, it's also create physical healing on the brain level, which is interesting to look at.
Yeah, so powerful, isn't it? I think it's one of these things where it comes down to kind of public opinion, doesn't it? Like, does a politician want to put this to a ballot to upset the most amount of people and lose his place, even though if it's beneficial? So you almost have to win the majority with and this is essentially one of the steps, isn't it? Just to get people talking about it, spread the word, allow it to sit into people's subconscious, let them hear more and more about it. And then slowly but surely, when it pops up on the ballot in their local town or in their, whatever, in their country, it's not such a scary revolution against that potential, you know? So this is one of the things you guys are doing is so fantastic, that you're just spreading the word and trying to get the message to people that there is legitimate science out there that's showing the positive benefits of this. And it could be, because it could be you one day, it could be me, you could walk outside, be in an accident, you know, undergo some sort of brain trauma, and then these are the things that you or your parents or somebody in your family, you know, and these are the things you, all of a sudden it's working in one country, but it's not allowed in your country. You think, what are the options? What do we do? That's a tough place to be in.
Yeah, one of our first volunteers, she had bulimia and anorexia for many years, and alcohol addiction and drug addiction. And she was in the UK. She went into rehab, I think 2 or 3 times at the cost of £100,000 or £200,000, extremely expensive, with no result. You know, talk therapy, cognitive therapy, you know, any therapy that's now available in psychology and psychiatry, and nothing really worked. And if you look at the suicidal rates of people that suffer from anorexia, is gigantic. It's maybe one of the worst diseases to have. And she couldn't get treatment in the UK, and she eventually, as a last resort, found a clinic in Mexico to treat her with ibogaine, followed by working with ayahuasca. And it was, if I'm not mistaken, $10,000 compared to £100. And it worked for her, you know. And that kind of care was not available in her home country, and it was a last resort. Now the science shows that these treatments are very effective with addictions and very effective with emotional issues and suffering. But you know, the countries that regard themselves as very advanced are actually backward in some ways, you know, and greater awareness is going to create, as you say, greater susceptibility to those ideas and those practices. That's what we're about. Yeah.
A really good point about the cost of you know, currently very prohibitive, the cost of you know, getting hold of this kind of treatment. So, you know, and it's precisely in the communities, you know, particularly with, you know, recent developments with, you know, global pandemic and whatnot, that the communities that are suffering the most from mental health crises, you know, addiction, dysfunctional behavior, and that's, you know, you can speculate that's only going to get worse as we kind of go through this kind of pandemic. But the communities that are most kind of susceptible to these issues are often the poorest communities. So it seems like a bit of a scandal, if I'm honest, if it requires someone to have the means to have, you know, I guess, you know, to go to Peru for a series of ceremonies, you can maybe do it for maybe £2,000-3,000. But £2,000 or £3,000 is a lot of money for people in these communities who would you know, potentially, you know, benefit, you know, greatly from it. So I think the kind of the sort of democratization of it is a very important sort of pathway for us, and certainly from my side, thinking how can we provide opportunity. I mean, because it's not for everyone. Let's say it's not, you know, it's not going to be mandatory, but the opportunity. It's about democratizing the opportunity, so people have you know, even people on limited means, should it be subsidized via a kind of a single payer healthcare system? I mean, these are big questions, but these are the questions we have to ask, because at the moment we seem very much in a kind of a rut of, we know there's a kind of escalating crisis of addiction. We know there's an escalating crisis of mental health, particularly among young people. We know there's a you know, time bomb of old age and of potential kind of mental health issues for elderly people. But no one's coming up with anything, you know, there's a kind of a ready-made potential solution here. It's ready-made and it grows in the ground. It's not even anything we have to kind of, you know, make up. We're not working round the clock on a vaccine here. These things grow in the ground. You know, this is the natural world we're talking about. So it seems just a kind of a, you know, very frustrating, but at the same time just very kind of, you know, unwise. You know, and you know, trying to tap into these ancient wisdoms, you know, to kind of just at least give ourselves the opportunity to kind of, you know, to move forward. And as you know, as John said previously, we just want to try and make more connections, be less competitive, work together. There's enough of us now. And as a famous person said a long time ago, there is enough to go around. You know, it's only the way that we're structured that means that there isn't.
Yeah, it's probably only a matter of time, isn't it? It's just a case of when, you know, like once you start to push the needle, gain some momentum, push it harder, and then it eventually tips. And you see what happens with the cannabis in the States, you know, once it went legal in one or two spots, then it just became unavoidably beneficial to people for all sorts of conditions. And then it's okay, well, let's do it. And then you just got to worry about the capitalists not getting their hands on it and turning it into something unthinkable.
A pill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the challenges with psychedelics in general, is that because they're not addictive and they're not very
it's not a good business model, yeah, for big pharma, yeah. And
as well as they actually do solve issues, so you don't need to deal with those issues again. So repetitive clients are not very common. You might come back to deal with other things, but usually once you solve an issue, it's solved. And it's very inexpensive. If you look at that, you know, usually, you know, if you talk about psilocybin, it grows in nature. If we talk about, you know, LSD that is used for, you know, cluster headaches or can work on depression and people microdose it, it's extremely inexpensive. So the financial model around it is not so much in patenting it in production, but rather in services. And that's a little bit more complicated because it's exactly the opposite model of what big pharma get a patent for 20 years and then they they sell it as much as they can, and they want to hook people on their pills, right? So it's really challenging for people on how to bring it to market and how to make it available. One of the, many people just do it pro bono. Many people believe in it, and some companies like USANA, which is a company out of the US that is producing psilocybin, FDA grade psilocybin. It's pretty much for benefit corporation rather than for profit. So you see these new financial models coming up, and people within the community are looking to see, okay, how are we going to do that in a way that is actually protecting nature, protecting indigenous knowledge and cause, and beneficial for the planet, without all those ugly things that ruthless capitalism brings in. And this is part of the discussion within the global community of psychedelics and entheogenic plants, is how to do it. But the future seems pretty bright, because now we know that there are a lot of super smart people that are part of this community. And you have engineers, you have politicians, you have lawyers, you have architects, you have web developers, you have any people from all walks of life. And that's very encouraging, because people are gathering together and doing small projects together. And it's beautiful to see that happening organically.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Do you want to give the guys listening a shout out of where they can catch both of you guys and where they can follow your stuff online, or what might be a good resource for them if they're just tapping into this subject for the first time? Instead of talking about what their experience of it is, where could they learn more about the benefits of it? Like, is there resources anywhere that would be useful?
Yeah, so there are many organizations out there that are have very good information. For example, maps.org, maps.org, is an organization out of the US that you can go to. iCEERS.org, ICEERS. They're out of Spain. They specialize in plant medicine, ayahuasca. They have some research on iboga. The Beckley Foundation in the UK is a great resource as well to check out. You can look at what the Imperial College of London Department on Psychedelics is doing research on. It's also very advanced. Johns Hopkins has a new Center for Psychedelics research. So the list goes on and on.
Yeah,
but
cool.
You got the gist of it.
And then where can people catch up with the Thank You Plant Medicine stuff?
Yeah, so on Facebook, Thank You Plant Medicine. On the community page, Thank You Plant Medicine Community. On our website, www.thankyouplantmedicine.com. And send us a message, get involved. We're also on Instagram, Thank You Plant Medicine. And yeah, join the community. Ask the questions. So we have a community with right now almost 13,000 people. Anybody asking any question about any aspect of entheogenics and psychedelics immediately gets about 50 to 100 responses, and it makes sense. So join the conversation.
And the ambition is to work with the great people past, present and future, who brought us to this point of the movement, is to make more connections, and to make more links, and to grow the mainstream dialogue, and to kind of try and break down the stigma that currently exists. So it's a long process, but I guess the common theme for people who are kind of involved in the movement is that once it's part of you, there's almost like no going back. It's not, you can't wind the clock back to a kind of pre-experienced days, because things are just so fundamentally different. And yeah, so it's about moving forward. We're really looking to grow and build, and just keep the movement moving forward.
Awesome. Well, I wish you guys the best of luck. And like I said, anything else we can help with, Caroline and I, let us know. Is there anything you want to add, Caroline?
Sorry, I was just muting myself. No, I just wanted to say thank you guys for taking the time to speak to us, and it's been extremely valuable in my life. So as any way that we can help share that along, then I'm in.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, guys. And we encourage anyone listening to go check them out. And we'll link to some of that stuff you mentioned in the show notes below so people can check it out there.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. Thanks so much, guys. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Amazing.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.